Hi, everyone. Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and my guest today on Here We Are is Emily Murphy Kaur. Emily is an innovative educator and noted author. She's a longtime yoga practitioner and trainer and an Ayurvedic health counselor. She's also a co-founder of Setu Vermont, a wellness retreat center right here in West Brattleboro. Emily's also on the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory District School Board, where she's the chair of the Programmatic and Performance Committee. Welcome to Here We Are today, Emily. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's great to see you.
Yes, it's nice to see you too.
We're using in-person very freely these days. You know, the in-person is two-dimensional instead of three.
Right.
So
as long as there's a face, it's in person to us.
That's right. And it's good to see people without a mask on too. So Emily, you have been an educator for many, many years, and not many, because you're not that old, but you're from Western Massachusetts. You grew up on a family farm, one of 4 kids. Yeah, how was that for you?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, we were always in nature, always playing outside. I had 3 brothers and sisters, so I think we kept my parents very busy.
Yes.
And I had a lot of experiences because my parents, when we were running the farm, they actually did a lot of field trips. And so I felt like that was kind of my first stint in education. I got to, skip school and then help with the field trips. So help reading kids the stories or telling people about the types of apples we had and those kind of things. So it was a different type of schooling experience.
What kind of farm was it?
It was an apple orchard and Christmas tree farm.
Oh, nice. That's nice. So people would come and choose their Christmas trees and.
Yep.
Yeah,
there's a lot of traditions we got to see with different families, and that was really beautiful to see.
Yes. And people would come back year after year.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really nice. And during that time, when you were a little kid, was there anything that you were particularly interested in?
I think 2 things that I found really interesting when I was a kid. So one was culture, which I still feel like is super intriguing. I remember myself as a kid really being interested. My mom said like every day in watching Big Bird in China. I wanted to go to China so bad. I used to dig in the backyard thinking that I would hit China, which obviously never happened. And I've not yet made it to China. So maybe that's going to be in my near future, but I have made it to Asia. So that's exciting. Mm-hmm. But so I'd say culture was always really kind of a part of my life. Mm-hmm. And additionally, I really loved softball. And so I played a lot of softball. Actually, in high school, my freshman year of high school, I got a scholarship to actually go to a Bo Sox baseball camp. So I was the first girl to ever be integrated into that baseball camp. And it was a woman who was on the Bo Sox board. Her name was Mary Pratt. She was actually a Georgia Peach, are they the Georgia Peaches? The one that were featured in the A League of Their Own.
Oh, yes.
She was actually on the Bo Sox board and a big advocate for women in sports. And so she had helped me to integrate into that camp. So I would say those were the 2 big things. I loved culture and tried to kind of get whatever I could. And then I played a lot of softball and baseball. So I can remember being a freshman in this all boys baseball program and taking my first lead off the base, because I'd only seen it when I watched the Red Sox or different teams, and I took a lead and the pitcher threw the ball to first base, but I forgot that I had to go back. I'd never done that. I knew you had to do that. So actually the first baseman came up and tagged me. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh my God, I would never do that again."
Right.
But that's how it goes.
Quite an honor though, to be, first girl. That's pretty fabulous.
Yeah. It was really awesome. And
very amazing. Yes. That's definitely to have on your resume wherever you go.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And I got to meet lots of different old time Red Sox players and know a little bit more about Mary Pratt. So that was really special because there wasn't so many actually women from the All-American Girls Baseball League still with us, it was so long ago. So it was awesome.
Yeah. So you went on and you studied at UMass Amherst, and you were studying poli-sci and art. And also you ended up in a language dorm, which sounded really interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my second year at UMass, I had found they had a foreign language dorm. So you kind of described it perfectly. And what that was is each floor actually spoke a different language. So people were pursuing minors, majors, all different things, but it was kind of a little taste of that culture here in Amherst. Like you didn't have to go abroad to be speaking the language. So I was on the Spanish immersion floor, but actually some of my best friends, even to this day, actually lived on the Japanese immersion floor. So you kind of got to integrate throughout. Obviously, I wasn't speaking Japanese with them, but you got to be around people who all had a passion for languages or a passion for culture, which I think was really, really important.
Yeah. And for you to be interested in culture at such an early age, it's a perfect place for you to be, right? All different kinds of people all the time, every time you go up the stairs.
Yeah, it felt amazing. I don't know. I mean, one actually, like you say, it's interesting. Like each kid has this kind of, unique thing that they find of interest, right? And you never know really where they got it. But I know my teacher back in India, she's like, you're just remembering this, essentially saying like you had this somewhat in a past life in India. They a lot of times, the culture and the religions have this past life or reincarnation belief. But I always find that interesting. I'm like, yeah, where did I get this? And where do all kids get that now that I have a baby? What is she gonna find really intriguing?
Yes, that's right, because she's a whole new person. During that time when you were in college, you were also doing some traveling. Is that right?
Yeah, it was my first few trips out of this country. I hadn't traveled prior to college. And my junior year, there was an alternate spring break program. And I was like dying to go abroad. And I know my parents were a little hesitant. They had gone to Canada and traveled in the US, but, to go to a foreign country, especially the countries I was interested in, which, maybe had like political systems that weren't as stable or these kind of things. But I ended up doing alternate spring break in the Dominican Republic, looking at the equity in educational opportunities amongst amongst Haitians in the Dominican. So that was, amazing experience. I got to speak Spanish. I got to do a lot of the things that I was really interested in at that point, and then apply them to a larger project back here.
Yes. And, it also sounds like it was integrating your interest in being in a foreign country for one thing, but also the politics of it, right, played in as well. You got a couple masters in education, one from Columbia, one from Simmons, and you did some teaching Montessori. Can you talk a little bit about your development in pursuing education?
It was a long-term kind of trajectory. So even as early as I had a job when I was in, or position, or, I don't know what to call it, but I guess a job when I was in high school where I was a ski instructor for the Special Olympics. And so I was teaching actually a lot of people who were older than me, who were in the Special Olympics. I think to qualify for that, I don't know what the age brackets are, but definitely there were people who were in their 20s and I was in high school. And that was really exhilarating, really a huge learning experience, breaking things down and, things that came really easy to me, but really having to explain and support somebody. Right. And that felt really good. I remember developing really strong bonds with some of the people in the program and the parents and seeing how the families were so involved in the whole experience was really special. And so when I graduated college, I taught at a Montessori school. I got a half-time Spanish teacher position. Soon after that, after I kind of got my feet under me, I went, I had a few other steps, but we'll fast forward a little. And I got a degree in working with kids who had more significant disabilities, and then helped to found a program for 7th and 8th graders to help keep them included in the district rather than, sending them on an out of district placement. And that was, like all of my, like you kind of accumulate all these skills. Everybody does. You accumulate all these skills across time and you're like, I wonder like how this is going to apply. And in that position, a lot of them came together, right? Like working with families was super integral, and designing a lot of curriculum felt really creative. I used some of the Montessori materials, like I had a budget, so I got to use that budget to maybe expose kids to, manipulatives and things they hadn't had before in hopes that it would, spur some connections. And so from that point, though, I realized I was like, I find this really amazing work. But I was always wondering, do I see myself here in 10 years? Where do I see myself? And I really felt like I saw myself making a difference, maybe at maybe a district level or state level, like some different level. Having teacher voice or my voice integrated in a way to promote other teachers to have their voices integrated. So I worked at a think tank after that and started to really pursue that work. I mean, even just the like title think tank,
It
I was
sounds
like,
cool. Yeah.
sounds so cool. Like, I wanted to be there. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt like people were really innovating. Right. And that sounded like the place to be. And in many ways they were, right. Doing lots of research and, really, it was a cutting edge experience. I mean, they were pursuing projects that they got funding for and where they could really look at new ways of doing business and then share the learnings back to politicians or back to the Department of Education to kind of think about how they're making change. So it was a really change-making role, which I loved.
Yeah.
And I've always been the type of person who likes to build the plane while I'm flying it. And so that intrigued me that we were like, oh, we're building, like, we're going to try to see how this new system can function.
You did a lot of research. You wrote a book. It was published by Harvard Education Press. You were investigating how people can work together to support individual and group improvement. So that seems to be the subject of the book, but also a core issue for you.
Yeah. So I wrote, along with two co-authors, a book, Improving Education Together, which was this culmination of the projects we had been doing at the think tank. There was a quote by Paul Revell. He used to be the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts. And he said, like, your life only makes sense when you look back on it. And now I realize too, it's like, oh, a lot of the stuff that I do is really about individual or group change. Even now, in the founding of our center, right? We're really working on individual and group change.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah, it's fascinating to see that. And the older you get, the more you have to look back upon to see how it connects or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you, I don't know if it was around this time, but you started traveling back and forth, Boston to India. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I met my husband in maybe 2014 or a little bit before then. And he's of Indian origin. So my husband's from Mumbai, India, Harmeet. And when I was working at the Rennie Center, which is the name of the think tank, he kept pushing me to say, like, who's your mentor? Like, who are you looking towards? Like, who would you like to become? Like, he's a real visionary. So he's always kind of promoting these ideas. I'm like, and I would look at all the people around me and they were doing amazing things, but I was like, I just don't see, not that I'm going to model exactly after them, but I don't see where I'm going in this space, right? Like, I think there's something else for me. So my husband was like, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, but my husband now, he was like, well, why don't you do what I did? He's like, I picked up my bags and left for the US. He's like, why don't you do the same? Like, pick up your bags and leave for India. Yeah. And so I was like, like, I finished up the book and I was like, okay, like, there was a little book, like some speaking gigs and stuff planned, but there was like an interim between them. So I was like, okay, like, I think I could do this. And so I left, and we were already practicing yoga traditionally in the Boston area. And so I went there and practiced actually with Saraswati Joyce. And she's one of the most well-known teachers in the Ashtanga field, her and her son, Sharat Joyce. And so I got accepted to study with her, and I studied with her for 3 months. And then just, it kind of, started to be like a constant, like, I'm coming back here, then I'm going back, like I was back and forth. Yeah. And we started to really, my husband was like, well, like, we're starting to consider the dream of opening a retreat center. Like, we had, at that point, we had explored other retreat centers in the area, but we're like, there's something missing. Like, and I would say to my husband, I was like, wow, like, when people talk about yoga who have like a base in India, whether or not they be Western or Indian, there's something different, right? There's like this cultural component that they're getting at, and this kind of like embedded lifestyle. And I didn't see that reflected in any retreat centers. And so that really started to make us think, like, maybe we'd eventually open that, which has now happened. So
it has happened. And when you were in India, you were studying Ayurvedic medicine with your teacher as well, right? So she was a spiritual as well as a practicing teacher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my journey kind of went a little, like, I feel like when you're on the path you're supposed to be on, things just start opening up. And that's kind of always how I've lived, is like, okay, like, follow your intuition and like, keep moving. Don't get so attached. And so actually, when I was there studying with Saraswati ji, I met an Ayurvedic doctor. That Ayurvedic doctor introduced me, who I'm still really great friends with. She introduced me to her mother, who actually happened to be a really amazing yoga teacher and based in Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly I've started to more and more consider her my teacher, right, in Chennai. And now, we stay in contact. She actually guided me through my whole, is it called prepartum? Like, what's it called before you give birth and then postpartum?
Uh-huh.
She was like, constantly telling me, okay, like do this breath work, do this, do this. So, I mean, both of them have been really integral in my Ayurvedic experience and also my yoga.
Yes. And could you give us a snapshot, which is sort of the wrong word to use, of Ayurvedic medicine?
So Ayurvedic medicine is a 3,000-year-old tradition based in India. And it's really considered the sister science of yoga, because actually in the Yoga Sutras, one of the traditional texts written by Patanjali, it says Atha Yoga Anushasanam. And what that means is now we start the practice of yoga. And so a lot of scholars have suggested, well, now suggests that there's something before. And actually, when you look at the chronology of the text, Ayurveda was before. So it's the idea that you would make your body healthy by using food as medicine. Mm-hmm. And then you would start the practice of purification of all the channels and everything, and raising your consciousness through the practice of yoga.
Emily, you're going back and forth, Boston, India. You're bringing all of these things back. You and your husband, or almost husband at that time, were talking about opening a center. How did you go about finding a center? What was that like for you?
So it took a while. We had, and we really, I feel like across time, started to know more and more of what we needed from a space. I think my parents were really integral in that. So they came along with us to see all the spaces, because we were so excited to start something and to share that some of the places that we were like, yeah, that's right. My parents were like, what? Like this isn't going to work. Like it's right on a road. It's really small. Like you need a bigger space. So it was really helpful to have them, because as we all know, you can kind of get caught up in your dreams.
Yeah.
But we landed on this place in Brattleboro. I can remember I was actually in India for a stint in the summer. I think might have been in Mysore, so in central South India at that time. And my husband had messaged me and said, oh, look at this amazing house in Brattleboro. And it was this one on Quills Hill Road. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. It looked like, a little bit French, like it had a stucco exterior. It was really cute and different. And, or maybe it was like Portuguese inspired, like Pondicherry, like in India. And I just liked it. I was like, oh, and actually had a separate space for a family to live in. So I was like, oh, this is nice. Like we'd have a little bit more separateness, which my parents had been like, you need that. So anyways, he had messaged and I was like, that's amazing, but I'm in India for another 2 months, like doubtful it's going to be there. But if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, And so when I got back, we actually didn't rush to see it. We didn't even kind of think it would still be here. And we reached out to actually Dan Normando at Berkeley Veller and said to him, look, we're interested in meeting up and, learning more about the area. And he was like, is there anything you want to see? So we're like, yeah, like if this place is still available. He's like, it is. And so when we came up here, my parents were here again. And all of us were like, this is it. It had a pond. I mean, we had a wish list, right? Like of everything we'd ever love to have. Pond has a pool. It has, it had a hot tub, which we replaced, but it still had a space for that. And like a lot of bedrooms and a place where we could do, convert into a yoga shala, yoga school. So it just really was, perfect. And I think we purchased it in November, or, we started the process in November 2018. And then I left for India again. And I think 1 week after I got back from India, we were like packing up our place.
Wow.
And it was it was crazy, but it was, like life, it's a journey.
And you had no connection to Brattleboro before that.
I mean, aside from my parents are in Western Mass, I mean, I had visited Brattleboro. Actually, my mom was reading a little bit from my baby book this morning, trying to compare, like, oh, this is when you did this. And now that I have my 8-month-old daughter. And actually in the first 3 months I had been to Putney. So I don't know what we were doing in Putney, maybe just like, stopping in for, I don't know, something at the country store or something. I'm not sure, but that wasn't written in the baby books.
The wellness center is called Setu. And Setu is an interesting word. We don't know what it means as Americans. So if you could enlighten us.
Yeah. So Setu, there's a little story with it. So I'll tell the story. Hopefully it'll help solidify in folks' minds. But So actually, when I was practicing in India, the way yoga practice is done in India is it's less of like a group class. It's more of an individual practice.
Mm.
And so in the Ashtanga yoga system, or the Mysore Ashtanga, what happens is you add on one pose at a time. And the teacher gives you that pose, right? Like when she feels that you're here, she feels that you're ready, you add that pose on.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, I was practicing in India. We're trying to figure out like our naming. And I was on actually Setu, it's called Setu Bandhasana. And I was stuck on that pose. And we had been, like brainstorming, like throwing a ton of different names at the wall. And my husband was like, what about Setu? That sounds nice. And I was like, I'm on Setu Bandhasana. Like, that's perfect.
Ah.
And I was like, actually, like, because we kept saying it, we're like, Setu, like, it means bridge, which really appealed to us. Because we're like, not only is my husband and my relationship kind of a bridge between cultures, right? But that's what we wanted to do, was provide this bridge. And I said to him, I remember saying to my husband, I was like, actually, and in Spanish, like "sé tú mismo" means like you be you. And so I was like, oh, like, we want that kind of vibe, right? We want people to come in to be who they are, and to like experience the traditions that we've fallen in love with, and we feel like have really, created our lifestyle and helped our lives. So
yes, and that word makes so much sense in all of the stories that you've told in the show too. Bridges between all kinds of things, starting with Christmas trees and families, right, and working your way through.
I like that, starting with Christmas trees and families.
Yeah, and I also just want to give a shout out to your husband, Harmeet Singh.
Yes,
because he is the co-founder that you co-founded with.
Yes.
Yeah, Setu.
Couldn't do this without him. Definitely not.
I just want to say to the audience too that you've got a great website, and the information will be at the end of the show to get onto your website and see. And what you folks have done in a very short period of time certainly looks very remarkable. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the space itself, because you've got accommodations for retreats, for groups of people coming in. I believe that the space is also available to rent. People can rent the space, but you're doing your own workshops and trainings and all kinds of things there. So yeah, give us a little more info on that.
Yeah, so we have a lot going on. We're actually reopening on May 14th, and we're excited we've been closed now for a year. So I'm really excited to get things going again, because the space has felt pretty empty for a little while.
The pandemic really must have put a hold on things.
We had so many people coming from out of state, so it just didn't make sense to expose our community to, more and more folks.
Right.
So what we offer here is we have a yoga shala. As I said, shala means like a school. It actually translates literally to home. So like almost going home to yourself. And we have yoga on the weekends and a few weekday classes. And additionally, we have meditations. So we do gong meditations every week. We have meditation retreats, one-day retreats. So, folks who are local or coming from afar could join in. And more recently, in the past maybe year and a half, we started to launch more and more Ayurvedic programming. We do consultations, like health consultations for people who have, just want to stay healthy and use food in a different way, learn about spices, learn to, about some of the approaches to cooking and health, or people who have certain medical issues, right? And they're trying to look for a different approach to addressing those. So we've done that, or we do that. Additionally, we have the one-day retreats for Aveda, and we're launching a really exciting, which I'm like super psyched about, 220-hour Ayurveda training. So it's in the West, it's like kind of the first training to go on to be an Ayurvedic doctor, right? There's like 4 steps. It's a long-term process, but this is the first training, and is really focused on yourself and learning to use the principles of Ayurveda to improve your health and the health of your family.
So you will have people signing up for that and coming to do that training, and then they will go on to another step as a practitioner.
Yeah, so it goes like the first level is all about you. The second level is to be an Ayurvedic health consultant. It's like really learning about some of the basic herbs, and it's all about focusing on digestion. Third step is practitioner level, which is focused on really more herbal combinations and focused on more disease pathologies. And then Ayurvedic doctor obviously is an MD level. So that's all encompassing in a lot of different therapies, or at least therapies that can be practiced in the West, because there's very many differences in Ayurveda in the West and the East, or at least in what can be practiced.
You're focusing on these ancient traditions from India as well, right?
Yeah, so we offer like a bunch of different stuff that people can, it really is kind of like you add on as you stay for your stay, or if you come for a day, you can kind of add on to your experience. So we do traditional Ayurvedic massage, which most people haven't experienced. I actually experienced, ours is a little different than I experienced in India, but a little story just because it's funny.
Yeah.
Remember the first time I went to India I wasn't practicing yoga in India, although we were practicing. It was actually to visit my husband's family. And my husband was like, oh, like, let's check out, I want to go get an Ayurvedic massage. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what this is, like never heard of it, but cool, I'm open. And so we went to this place and it was, I walk into this room, nobody speaks English. And there's like this, maybe Sanskrit chanting music on. I was like, oh, this is like nice. He's in another room, 2 women massage therapists. And they're like, okay, take off your clothes. I was like, oh, I guess this is like fully nude, which was different. So I was like, okay, whatever. So then I do that and I get on the table and everything. And so they start doing a bunch of oils, right? And like tons of oil. I hadn't realized how much oil is used. And it's like, in Ayurveda is all about the oils, if you don't know that already. But if you want to learn about that, you can go to the training. But so anyways, I get on the table, they're doing a ton of oils. And then all of a sudden they start like putting, they put like rose water on cotton balls and put them on my eyes and my ears. I started to like freak out. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Nobody told me about this process. Like I feel a little sensory deprivation. And additionally, I'm like so buttered that I can't get off the table, like I can't go anywhere. And I was just thinking about specifically my mom. Was like, if my mom ever saw me, she'd be like, what are you doing? And so, I did take the little thing off. I was like, what's going on? And they were like showing me that like, it was going to be, they had this like oil, I want to say like this thing that would drip oil onto your forehead. And so it was like, dharana, like focus. And it was actually really relaxing and amazing once I relax, which is how most experiences go, right? Like if you're not expecting something, you tense up and you can't enjoy it. And so like, I was like, okay, I feel safe. Like Harmeet told me this place was good. And so I like laid there. And once the process was going, I was like, this is amazing. Like everybody should experience this, but maybe with a little bit more information. We can adapt it to what people are expecting a little more in a massage, but still give them the experience of the oils and of the traditional components.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. So a lot of your teacher training goes into this, obviously, a lot of your love for travel. You're able to live that out. And I do have to say that looking at your website and seeing the beauty of the place, and again, this is on Quails Hill Road in West Brat, not far from town at all. It's amazing that we have something like this in town. So your rooms are wonderful. They're gorgeous, sort of luxury rooms, and really thoughtful. And you've got a wonderful little tiny house in the back, which I believe one of our other Brattleborians, Blair Belt, and her husband built before they left town.
Yes. Yeah, we had right at the beginning when we were really establishing ourselves, we had run into them actually at the Tiny House Fest. And it was always our vision where we would have like, maybe a little cabin or some little abodes for people to snuggle into. Yeah. And they were just such artists and such friendly people. And so we started chatting. We're like, oh, we have this vision. And, it was really abstract. I think we had to like super rein it in, but they were good at that because both of their background is Jason's background's in theatrical set design, and Blair, obviously the Circus Art School. She's just like a super creative person. Yeah. So yeah, they like reined us in, and then we got to a plan and they created, I think they finished up, we had launch and it wasn't completed yet. We like showcased it at the launch party, but it wasn't, in a place where people could stay in it, but they completed it. And then like one day later, they were like hitting the road and leaving town. We'd love to still have them here because we have so many more innovations we could do together. But
oh yeah, well, they might be back. They might be back.
Yeah, who knows?
And, yeah, you've got a lot going on there, and it's very exciting. You're going to be relaunching coming up really soon into a new season, so we'll all have to stay tuned.
Yes.
Emily, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. It was lovely.
Really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody out there in the audience for joining in today, finding out about yet another new and exciting place in the Brattleboro area. And again, as I said, the information for the Setu Retreat Center will be at the end of the show, so you can check that out and see just how much fun it would be to go there. And stay tuned. We will be back again next week, and we look forward to seeing you. We're very grateful to Emily Murphy Kaur for being with us today. Thank you.